Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we're doing a How to Play Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and I'm going to cover the Wizard. Now this is just the Wizard Basics 101. It's the rudimentary and fundamental information that you will need when you're learning how to use your Wizard. Now if you're an experienced player, this video is not going to be so helpful to you. If you are really new to the game, this is really what this particular video is set up for. Now, if you are an experienced Dungeon Master and you like this content, by all means press this information towards your players if they are new to running a Wizard, and hopefully that will help you and reduce the amount of time you spend explaining stuff. I'm going to be using the Wizard, the pre-made character sheet from the Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set. Now this is the character sheet here. I'm just going to push my little Wizard out of the way so you can see it. And basically this is already set up. All of the skills, abilities, modifiers, attack rolls, all the information you need is already on the sheet. And it also has a second page on the back, which is awesome, which shows you and explains how to level up your character. Now I'm going to start most of my stuff off with level 1 characters rather than jumping our way through all of this. We will eventually get there because we have to, otherwise it wouldn't cover the Wizard, would it? But we're going to try to focus primarily on just the very rudimentary basics for today, just to get started. Now, if you want more information on the Wizard, open up page 112 of the Player's Handbook, and you will find details on the Wizard. And it's quite a large section because the Wizard is a complex character to play. The Wizard is a master of magic. That's its use, the kinds and forms of magic that exist, and its function. They specialize in more than just spell casting, which I think is something that a lot of people forget when it comes to playing a Wizard, because they are the information banks. They specialize in information, languages, and study. These are the things they are really good at, not just throwing out spells. They're not just spell slingers. Wizards are also extremely good at unlocking barriers that often are either very hard or impossible for the other characters in the party to get past. I always found that when I was playing a Wizard, they are really vital for getting past the really tough stuff, and often there's a magical component which makes it so difficult. There are fundamental concepts to understanding a Wizard, and that is, 1, your Wizard is the party information bank, as I said. So if you'll have a look on this character sheet, you'll notice that there are some skills that are marked by a circle that's blocked in. And Arcana is a knowledge skill. Okay, we'll skip the insight because that's not. Investigation isn't so much a knowledge skill, but it is the application of that. So yet again, same sort of thing. And then religion. If you have a look at the options in terms of the skills that you can select, almost all of them are related to information like history, arcana, religion. The only one that is excluded is nature, and there is ways of picking up nature if you wanted to anyway. Remember, information bank. So what does that mean? That means that if you are outside of combat, you should be the one making knowledge checks. Other people can, but you're a Wizard. You should know information about this, so make knowledge checks. And when it comes to combat, the very first thing I would suggest you do is you make a monster knowledge check. If you have the skill that's pertinent or related to that monster, make a monster knowledge check and then pass that information on to the rest of the party, because you are the one who's supposed to tell them what the monster is resistant to, immune to, and just basically how it functions to make their life easier. Wizards are really hard to play, and they require a lot of work and study. I don't just mean in-game study, I mean literally outside of the game. I spend quite a lot of time just reviewing spells and reading through them multiple times so that I understand how they work. And that's not just a single spell. I mean, you're going to have only so many spells available to you, but when you want to open up the types of spells and add more spells to your spell book, you need to know which ones you're going to pick. And so you need to do a bit of reading, and you need to understand how your spells work, because there's nothing worse for a dungeon master than somebody who doesn't understand how their spells work and they're playing a Wizard. Read up as much as you can. I spend a lot of my time while the others are doing their turns, just reading and checking spells and making sure I've got everything lined up, because it chews up a lot of time when you start using spells. I would highly recommend having some shortcuts, making sure that you include like a page number so you can look up a particular spell. So if you have, like, the back of your character sheet often has a spell section and you write in your spells. Now it doesn't have it on this character sheet, but there is a section that allows that, and I would suggest writing the page number for that spell beside the spell so you can quickly and easily find that spell in an emergency, or when the Dungeon Master requires you to give them additional information. Wizards are really easy to kill. They go down really fast, so it's important that the wizard does not disappear on their own. Stay with the bulk of the party wherever possible. If they split up, you go with the tank and the bulk of the party. Don't go following the rogue anywhere. That's a really bad idea. So you should never see this. Just a wizard. Just a wizard means a dead wizard. So make sure that you have the bulk of the party around with you, because you need them. You aren't actually the powerhouse. You're actually secondary to everybody else. You are so reliant on everybody else at the table and in your game that if you don't have them around, you will get knocked out very fast, or potentially taken out of the game completely. In other words, passed by permanently. Casting spells is not always the best option. Now, I know that seems strange because it's a wizard, but don't always go straight for casting a spell. Remember, a wizard is supposed to be using their head. They may not have a high wisdom, but they are fairly intelligent, so they should be able to understand and learn a lot of information. Try to look for other options rather than dishing out spells. You only have a limited number of spells. You need to keep hold of them, and you also need to be smart about how you select your spells for your day, or the spells that you decide not to prepare. You don't have to prepare all of your spells all at once, and I'm going to go into that in more detail in probably another live stream. Utility spells will resolve problems that destruction spells can't. And more than a few people on the internet will be saying, look, build up your spell book with utility spells that have a function other than just dishing out Fireball, Magic Missile, Firebolt, Ray of Frost, or anything like that. Utility spells, I've found in the game, are the difference between success and failure. There's nothing worse than having to communicate with a monster or creature or an NPC and nobody speaks the language, and comprehend languages is so important. As soon as you get an opportunity to pick up comprehend languages, that changes the ball game and allows you options. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a situation where essentially you're going to have to attack or be attacked. Nobody will understand what each other is saying. So remember, utility spells, really important. Pick them up, get them into your spell book as soon as you possibly can. Carry a backup spell book. If time allows in the game, because it takes a little bit of time to actually do that, transcribing your spells into another spell book, and also it costs money. So it's not necessarily going to be the end all to your situation if you lose your spell book. But if you can get a backup, and if you've got the time in the game, the Dungeon Master will allow you to do it, and you've got the money, then a backup spell book is a really smart idea. One of the things I find quite frustrating is people who don't cast Mage Armor at the beginning of their adventuring day. So always cast Mage Armor on your wizard at the start of your adventuring day. And the only time I wouldn't worry about Mage Armor is if you have taken some sort of feature that allows you to increase your armor class, that you won't need any kind of Mage Armor. And that's the other thing. If you don't have Mage Armor as a known spell, that's not a very sensible thing to do. Because remember, you can cast it on not just yourself, but somebody else. It's a touch spell, you can cast it on somebody else. So it actually has a benefit. Rather than just casting it on yourself, you can improve somebody else's armor class. Try to remember Mage Armor first thing, soon as you wake up. Intelligence is your highest ability score if you want to be a functional wizard worth having around. Now, there's nothing wrong with making your character have lots of interesting quirks and so forth, but don't mess with intelligence. By all means, mess with everything else, but not the intelligence, because that's what's going to allow you to cast spells and be successful. It also is going to affect your knowledge skills, because most of your knowledge skills and the skills you're proficient with use intelligence. Don't mess around with intelligence. Make sure it's a good high score, and that's not just because you're trying to be a power gamer. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just so that you are functional with it. That's the key thing, is being functional. Arcana should always be a selected proficiency skill, for you are an expert in Arcana. Arcana is magic. I've seen people who've built a wizard and they have 2 different skills they can pick that they can be proficient in, on top of the background skills that they can pick up. And what do? They don't take Arcana. You should always have that as a selected proficient skill. It should always be blocked in dark. Remember, you are the wizard, you are the expert, so make sure you have it. That's one of the things I found quite frustrating, and I know people sort of say, well, yeah, but I want to give it flavour, but it's not the smart move. Like a rogue who detects danger like traps or ambushes, a wizard should also have the ability to detect things that a high perception character can't, like the rogue, and that is detect magic. Because even if a perceptive character does a really good job of rolling on the 20-sided dice and has a high modifier, there are some things they cannot perceive with their senses. Their eyes, ears, their nose, their touch. Those things can't be picked up, and you are the difference between picking that up and not. And detect magic is an important spell. I've seen a couple of people who've decided not to take detect magic and they played a wizard, and it's quite ridiculous. Now, I know this sounds like I'm being really hard, but honestly, I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. It is a spell that is a ritual, so you do not have to burn a spell slot for it. I know you have limited spell slots. You can take 10 minutes. If you've got time, take 10 minutes, cast it as a ritual, use the detect magic, and do a good scan of the area. It's not going to pick up everything. There are things that detect magic will not indicate, but it's still sensible to have. Stay behind the front line. Okay, I'm a little bit frustrated by people who have decided to build a wizard and they gave it armor. Now, my wizard that I play right now wears armor, but I do not get in the front line. Okay, just because I have a high armor class does not mean I will survive. Wizards have low hit points and usually a low armor class, and even with mage armor, and even if you decide to wear medium armor because you're able to, or you've got heavy armor because you've built your character in that way, don't stand in the front line because you still don't have that many hit points. You can't take a beating. If you have a whole lot of orcs showing up, the last thing you want to do is decide to grab your quarterstaff or your dagger and rush into battle. Please don't do that. Make sure you're staying behind the front line, and sometimes it's important to be sort of like the meat in the middle, the filling in the middle of the sandwich, so that you don't wind up getting battered around. So if that means that somebody is behind you to protect your back, then do that. So what makes a wizard really great is its versatility. It's a really versatile class. Fireball is not the answer to all solutions, neither is Magic Missile, and I realise if you've watched some of the games I've played in that I often use Fireball or Magic Missile. I use a lot of damaging spells, I do use a lot of fire spells, but a lot of the footage that you see isn't always everything that I'm doing. Build a character that's versatile, that can do lots of different things. And I believe somebody was mentioning the benefits of Chromatic Orb not so long ago. I was reading about it. I'm aware of the spell myself. It's a little bit expensive when you're starting out to actually use Chromatic Orb. When you get the opportunity to use Chromatic Orb, make sure that's on your spell list because it is versatile, it does different types of damage, and you'll need that later on in the game when you're dealing with monsters that have resistances and immunities. You want ritual spells. As soon as you get an opportunity to pick up new spells, I want you to start picking up ritual spells. These are spells that you don't have to use in combat, or you can use out of combat and take 10 minutes and cast it as a ritual. You don't even have to prepare the spell to use it. As long as it's in your spell book, you can take 10 minutes if it's a ritual and cast that spell. And there's a whole truckload, so pick up as many as you possibly can. Last point I want to make before I wrap up this particular short segment, and that is spells. What spells should you take? I want to indicate here on the pre-made character sheet, so I'm going to sort of push these guys a little bit further forward. We're going to say they moved up for now, so I can move this in. I don't know if you can necessarily see it clearly because the print is very, very small, so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. The cantrips that are listed on here are Mage Hand and Prestidigitation, which I have trouble pronouncing. It also has Ray of Frost and Shocking Grasp. Now the two ones that I would say are really important are Mage Hand. It has so many different uses, and Prestidigitation has lots of different uses too. So does Minor Illusion, Mending. There's very few spells that allow you to actually mend and repair something, so it's a good spell to pick up. I don't particularly like Light, but Light does have its uses if you can't use a torch. I prefer to go with just using a normal handy torch from your pack rather than having the light spell, but there are ways that you can utilize light. Go and aim for the cantrips that have a utility basis and try to only pick up one damaging cantrip. You know, decide on what the cantrip is that you're going to use the most and focus on that one. Next, when it comes to level 1 spells, and I'm only focusing on this level 1 wizard, this is just the basics. What spells should you have? We've already talked about Mage Armor. Unless you are using a different manner of increasing your armor class, then you should have Mage Armor. You should also have the spell Magic Missile, simply because you do not have to roll to hit. It does force damage. It can pretty much get past any spell resistance or spell immunity that a monster will have, because very few things have immunity or resistance to force damage, and that's what a Magic Missile does. And also you don't have to roll to hit. As I said, you just roll your damage, and that is important. The other spell I would say that you really want to try to pick up as well is Detect Magic. We were talking about that before. Make sure you have Detect Magic. Also, make sure that you have Shield. Shield is a spell that allows you to throw up a block. If you think you can block the spell and avoid taking a hit, then do it. The chances are when you get hit by missile fire from an arrow or other spells or a javelin or something else, that one hit is probably going to be enough to either take your character down, your wizard down, or it is going to be enough to kill your character and take them out of the game completely, unless of course you've got somebody close by who can get you back on your feet very, very fast. So that is the basics to the wizard. Now, if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, because I'm going to do more of these types of videos. If you want to get occasional notifications, there's a bell button underneath the video and you just press that, and that will give you a notification every once in a while. Leave a comment below and I will get back to you and answer your questions as best I can. If you want to support my channel, watching my videos is great. I get a tiny bit of ad revenue from YouTube. But if you really want to support my channel, I will not do Patreon. I'm sorry, but I feel like you giving me money to do something means that I am going to be losing control of the content, and for that reason I'm not going to do that. Instead, if you really want to support my channel, I have affiliate links in the description. Most of them are to Amazon, so if you don't buy on Amazon, just don't worry about it. You can click on the link, it'll take you to an item that you can purchase. If it's not something you want, you can go and buy anything unrelated to Dungeons & Dragons. As long as you click on that original link, it takes you there. I get a small commission for whatever you buy, and you pay exactly the same price. And that is the best way to support me if you're really serious about doing that. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.